Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Be sure to check out Dragon Shield for all of the best accessories to protect your decks. TCG Player for cards at great prices while supporting local game stores. And Patreon, where you get awesome benefits for your direct support. We are back for another Legacy gameplay video. If you enjoy our videos, please subscribe to our channel. It only takes a second, costs nothing to do, and goes such a long way in helping us out. If you'd like to help financially, consider signing up to our Patreon, buying some merchandise, or purchasing from the TCG Player links in the description below. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Mike piloting 4-color Loam control. This is a control deck that looks to interact with the board and slow the opponent while generating card advantage while filling its graveyard to recur Euro and key lands. Mike's opening hand contains a Tropical Island, Flooded Strand, 2 Ponders, Euro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, Swords to Plowshares, and a Force of Will. Next, we have ZACK piloting Reanimator. This deck seeks to land a large game-ending threat into the graveyard and reanimate it to close out the game. ZACK's opening hand contains a Dark Ritual, 2 Entombs, an Exhume, Lotus Petal, Bayou, and a Scrubland. Without further ado, let's begin this taxing temperamental tenacious tailspin. Mike wins the tooth-based eating contest and gets to start us off. Mike plays a Tropical Island for turn. He casts Ponder. He looks at the top 3, rearranges, and draws. Mike passes. ZACK draws a card for turn and plays a Bayou. He casts a Lotus Petal. He casts Unmask, exiling Entomb from his hand. In response, Mike casts Force of Will, exiling Ponder and paying 1 life. Unmask is countered, and ZACK casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Entomb. He fetches up a Grizzlebrand into his graveyard. He casts Exhume. It resolves, and ZACK puts Grizzlebrand onto the battlefield. He pays 7 life through Grizzlebrand and draws 7 cards. He casts Unmask, exiling Grizzlebrand, targeting Mike. Mike reveals his hand this time, and ZACK has him discard Swords to Plowshares. He pays 7 life and draws 7 more cards through Grizzlebrand. He cracks his Petal and casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 more black. He casts Entomb. He fetches up a Children of Corliss into his graveyard. He casts Reanimate. He brings back Children of Corliss to the battlefield, losing 1 life. He sacrifices it, gaining 15 life. He pays 7 life and draws 7 cards through Grizzlebrand. He pays 7 more life and draws 7 more. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Lotus Petal. He casts another Lotus Petal. He casts Reanimate, bringing back Children of Corliss, losing 1 life. He sacks Children, gaining 30. He pays 7 life and draws 7 cards through Grizzlebrand. He cracks both of its petals and casts Tendrils of Agony with a storm count high enough to drain Mike, and ZACK wins the game. Before game 2, Mike moves to sideboard. He takes out Prismatic Ending, 2 Euros, and a life from the Loam. He puts in 2 Containment Priests to deal with reanimation targets as they come onto the battlefield. He puts in an Ethersworn Canonist to stop storm turns, and a Flusterstorm for better interaction against storm. ZACK also moves to sideboard. He removes 2 Animate Dead and a Chrome Mox. He puts in 3 Xantid Swarms to prevent Mike from interacting during his storm turns. In this game, ZACK's opening hand contains an Unmask, Thoughtseize, Exhume, 2 Dark Rituals, Bayou, and his London Mulligan is a Tendrils of Agony. In this game, Mike's opening hand contains a Caracas, Forest, Misty Rainforest, Force of Negation, Swords to Plowshares, Containment Priest, and an Expressive Iteration. And Mike gets to start us off. Mike plays a Caracas for turn. ZACK realizes he's in bad shape already, and Mike passes the turn. ZACK draws and plays a Bayou. He casts Thoughtseize. In response, Mike casts Force of Negation, exiling Expressive Iteration, countering Thoughtseize. It's apparent that Mike really doesn't want ZACK to know what's in his hand. So, ZACK casts Unmask for its alternate cost, exiling Dark Ritual from his hand. Mike finally reveals his hand, and ZACK has him discard Containment Priest. ZACK ends his turn. Mike draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. Mike passes. ZACK draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. He gives the turn back to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Forest. Mike ends his turn. ZACK draws and plays a Snow-Covered Swamp. ZACK passes. At the end of ZACK's turn, Mike cracks his Misty Rainforest, pays a life, and fetches up a Tropical Island onto the battlefield. Mike then cycles Shark Typhoon, where X equals 1. He creates a 1/1 blue shark with flying and draws a card. Mike moves to his turn. Mike draws and plays a Snow-Covered Island. He casts Euro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Mike sacrifices Euro, gains 3 life, draws a card, and doesn't put any lands onto the battlefield. He moves to combat and attacks ZACK with a shark. ZACK takes it, and Mike ends his turn. ZACK draws and passes. Mike draws and casts Jace, the Mind Sculptor. He activates Jace's second ability, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. He plays a Tropical Island for turn. He moves to combat and attacks ZACK with his shark. ZACK takes it, and Mike gives the turn to ZACK. ZACK draws, sighs at how this game is starting to play out, and passes back to Mike. Mike draws and activates Jace's second ability, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. He casts Ponder. He looks at the top 3, doesn't like what he sees, shuffles, and draws. He plays a Field of the Dead. He moves to combat and attacks ZACK with his Shark. ZACK takes it, and Mike gives the turn to ZACK. ZACK draws, misses his land drop, and passes. Mike draws and activates Jace's second ability, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. He casts Life from the Loam, returning Misty Rainforest to his hand. He plays a Misty Rainforest for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Savannah onto the battlefield. He moves to combat and attacks ZACK with his Shark. He passes. ZACK draws and sacks his Verdant Catacombs, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards 2. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Entomb. He fetches up an Ashen Rider into his graveyard. He casts Animate Dead. In response, Mike flashes in an Endurance. It enters and ZACK puts his graveyard onto the bottom of his library. Animate Dead fizzles and ZACK passes to Mike. During his draw step, Mike dredges Life from the Loam back to his hand. He casts Life from the Loam, returning an island and a Misty Rainforest to his hand. He activates Jace's second ability, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. He plays a Misty Rainforest. Field of the Dead triggers and Mike creates a 2/2 zombie. He moves to combat and attacks ZACK with his Shark and Endurance. ZACK takes it and Mike passes back to ZACK. ZACK draws and casts Thoughtseize. Mike reveals his hand. ZACK sees he has no outs and then concedes the game to Mike. Before Game 3, Mike moves to sideboard. He takes out 2 Shark Typhoons. He puts back in 2 Euros to help close out the game faster. ZACK has no sideboard changes. In this game, ZACK's opening hand contains a Chancellor of the Annex, Unmask, Faithless Looting, Reanimate, Marsh Flats, Bayou, and his London Mulligan is a Snow-Covered Swamp. In this game, Mike's opening hand contains a Field of the Dead, Flusterstorm, Snapcaster Mage, Force of Negation, Containment Priest, Swords to Plowshares, and his London Mulligan is a Jace the Mind Sculptor. And ZACK gets to start us off. But ZACK has a pre-game action and reveals Chancellor of the Annex from his hand. ZACK plays a Marsh Flats for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards Chancellor of the Annex and Exhume. ZACK passes. Mike draws and plays a Field of the Dead into play tapped. Mike passes to ZACK. ZACK draws and casts Unmask, exiling a black card from his hand. Mike reveals his hand and ZACK has him discard Force of Negation. He plays a Bayou for turn. He casts Entomb. He fetches up a Grizzlebrand into his graveyard. He casts Reanimate, targeting his Grizzlebrand. Grizzlebrand enters and ZACK loses 8 life. He activates Grizzlebrand, paying 7 life and drawing 7 cards. Unfortunately, he doesn't have what he needs to continue and passes over to Mike. Mike draws, misses his land drop, and passes. ZACK draws and moves to combat. He attacks Mike with Grizzlebrand. Mike takes it and ZACK gains 7 life. In his second main phase, he activates Grizzlebrand, paying 7 life and drawing 7 cards. He casts Faithless Looting, drawing 2 and discarding 2 Chancellor of the Annex. He plays a Snow-Covered Swamp. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Lotus Petal. He casts Animate Dead, returning Chancellor of the Annex to the battlefield. He cracks his Petal to cast Exhume, returning another Chancellor to the battlefield. He casts Xantid Swarm. ZACK passes, discarding to hand size. Mike draws and plays a Ketria Triumph into play tapped. Mike accepts his fate and passes. ZACK draws, attacks Mike with everything, and ZACK wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a match. Congrats to ZACK on his win. In Game 1, ZACK was able to pull off the perfect turn through his deck, assembling a win right away. In Game 2, Mike was able to disrupt ZACK, control the board, and eventually close out the game. In Game 3, ZACK was able to capitalize on Mike's greedy keep by removing his only interaction and translating that into a lethal set of attacks. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. What do you think the most valuable card was in this match? Was it Grizzlebrand, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Chancellor of the Annex, or something else? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this Legacy video, consider sharing it with a friend, hitting the like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell to be notified whenever we put out more videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.